So what makes Kemetic Yoga different is that the postures that we do are also on the temple walls. They're in the hieroglyphs. They're on the pyramids. And even here in Ethiopia, when you think of Takla Haymanot, for example, he stood on one leg, they say, for 7 years. That's yoga.
That's yoga.
So even Sigdet, even the way Muslims pray, there is movement and prayer combined in our cultures already. It's just not been pointed out separately as yoga. And so Kemetic Yoga in particular, it links us to our ancestors. There are many poses that you find in India, that you find in Africa as well. But there are some poses you only find in Egypt, in Kemet, that you don't find anywhere else in the world. Right. So we can conclude that it outdates Indian yoga. In general, especially since Corona, yoga has boosted. It has become popular and many people create their own styles. So there are many schools, many teachers, many different thoughts around yoga. What I'm pretty sure of is all the teachers here in Addis, the Ethiopians that teach yoga full-time, we focus on the mind-body connection. It is not something that takes us away from our own religions. We can continue to practice our religion, add yoga to increase our focus, our concentration, to contribute to healing, a better blood circulation, better digestion. And with Kemetic Yoga, I feel like we're not even stepping out of our culture.
Right.
It is our own. Yeah. Everything started here in Africa. So I find that among some people there is a fear around yoga. But
what kind of fear? Fear in what sense?
Fear that it would take them away from their own religion.
How can you explain, I'm sorry for cutting in, but how can you explain it in a nice and simple way that yoga is yoga, religion is religion? The two are not even joined. Why would people fear yoga that would take them away from their religion? What does that have to do with it?
I think there's a difference between, for example, prayer and meditation. So when we pray to the divine.
Being. Exactly.
But when we meditate, we actually listen.
Thank you. To yourself.
Yes, to ourselves.
You're trying to go in.
You try to go inside, and even to connect to the divine, you can only do that when you are silent. Exactly. So the silence contributes us to be more in alignment with our own personal mission, with our own personal purpose in this life. So just to live life with more awareness, realizing that time is short, it's limited in a sense. So everything we do could matter.
Right.
So from that perspective, yoga is like a meditation movement. Especially when we do African yoga, it's very slow. There's one movement per breath. So there is no conflict really to religion. But since there are so many different styles of yoga, like people, for example, they have read books of Osho. That could change your mind about certain things. It could change your identity. And maybe they have seen people change when they open themselves up for anything.
Right.
Right? I would not recommend anybody to just do any random meditation that you find on YouTube or any random yoga without proper guidance, without understanding your own position and your own body and what you need. That's why we are here as teachers, to be able to guide and to make sure it's safe and in alignment with who we really are.
So what are the benefits of Kemetic Yoga? Did we go through that? No, we didn't.
Not step by step. There are many benefits to yoga, and some of them are general for all types of yoga. The fact that we move with the breath allows us to slow down our heartbeat, our breath, our thoughts. knowing that on average a person has 70,000 thoughts a day and the majority is negative, we need to get out of our heads. We need to connect to our body, connect to our breath, connect to the present so we can make an impact here and now, unbiased. It helps in the overall digestion system, the blood circulation, blood pressure, any blockages that you may have in your body, like if you have pain in your shoulder or in your lower back, by stretching it, by moving it, by twisting it, those blockages can be released so that the energy can flow better. In the end, it all comes down to our spinal cord. Our spinal cord connects everything to our mind. So when the spine is loose and free, that's how we can also feel internally. And even from the brain, the kind of signals that are sent then are more like oxytocin, is a hormone that makes you feel happy. When you are stressed, the brain releases a hormone called cortisol and even adrenaline. This can move you to do things, but when you move with anger and stress, it may not be as fruitful as when it comes from a center where we feel peace and where we feel love. So it works on the mind, making us feel more calm. Emotionally, we may feel more peaceful. And then physically, it has all these benefits that I just mentioned. And I feel like in Kemetic Yoga, in African Yoga, it all comes back to one, because we're not disconnected from our origin.
So you just said African Yoga and Kemetic Yoga. Kemetic Yoga is African Yoga.
It's a form of African Yoga because
So there's a
Kemet is
difference
African. Yes,
Exactly.
I mean I'm certified in both, and they are taught by different masters.
Ah, I didn't know there was an African Yoga
Yes, no,
outside of Kemetic.
Right,
You know
no.
what I mean? So I was just a little like, wait. So
Yes.
can you tell me about the African Yoga?
Sure,
Can
sure.
you tell us about?
I got certified as an African yoga teacher in 2020, just before Corona started in
Where?
Kenya.
In Kenya.
Yes.
Ah.
So my master teacher, Pablo Imani, is originally Jamaican, grew up in the UK, who has studied under many different masters, but then created his own style from that. And fundamental in African yoga is our connection to the elements. Okay. So we make certain movements to make us more aware of the air around us, the water within us, to awaken and activate the fire in our body, and also to really ground and connect to the earth. Okay. So the elements are really important. In African yoga, we also incorporate dance, because as African people, Black people, we love dance.
We love dancing.
So just to have fun. And there are also some specific movements that you might see fishermen make, for example. So when you would be pulling a net, you know, there are these kind of movements that we incorporate next to any archaeological findings of poses that were specifically from the Nile Valley. So it still kind of come back here, because this is where everything starts. Yes.
So I'm taking you all over the place. Now I'm going to return you to the Netherlands. Since you had mentioned you are an adoptee, I would like to know how old you were when you were adopted. And then I understand you are an advocate for origin-sensitive adoption. Can you tell us some of the problems that adoption, on top of interracial adoption, what does that mean? How sensitive are we when we give up our children? Do we know what we're giving them up to, or who we're giving them up to?
Yes, that's a really important question. I think in general in Ethiopia there is the idea that as long as you leave this country and you get into a financially better position, you're better off. But as human beings, we are complex and it's not that simple.
Right.
So especially when it comes to interracial adoption, a white person can never know what it feels like to be black. It's not something you can really explain, and as a parent, a white parent, it's extremely challenging to guide a black child into the condition of this world.
Right.
So if this world was perfect, it shouldn't matter at all. The reality is that there is racism, there is prejudice, and you deal with stereotypes, but as an adoptee, we lose our country, we lose our family, we lose our heritage and language to then be brought up into a new one where we're never really accepted as equal. So I never really felt at home in the Netherlands. Even though I'm well educated, I was kind of treated as a second-rank citizen, which I didn't really appreciate. And I never really felt that I could fully contribute to this Western system where everything is already set up and functioning. Whereas in general, as diaspora coming back, there is so much work out here. There's so much we could do. Now, when it comes to interracial adoption, I used to help adult adoptees when they come back to try and trace their birth families. So we would go to the orphanage, the police station, the hospital, the Ministry of Women and Children Affairs, and gather any information to help them find their own identity, to help them discover the essence of who they really are. When you don't know, like me, for example, until the age of 18, I didn't know my age, I didn't know my name, I didn't know my country, I didn't know anything. So it's really hard to feel complete.
Yeah.
There are a few families that adopt children that really support them. For example, they would give them language classes so they wouldn't forget Amharic.
Nice.
Or come back on a regular so they wouldn't feel a stranger in their homeland. But the majority of the families, this is not what they do. The awareness is not there. So they adopt an Ethiopian child, raising them as white Americans, but they're not. So there are a lot of nuances that we also deal with when we step out with a white parent into the street. We are treated differently.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, so somehow giving that a space internally is not so easy.
So going forward, you know, I know a lot of the adoption has stopped in this country right now.
International adoption is not allowed since 2018.
Is it because it's like it's stopped? It's not going to happen again? Or is this something that they are going to like look at all the children that have actually left the country, see how they are, and then have a better way? Or is this just stopped, period?
It stopped.
Okay.
I mean, I never know about the future policies, obviously, but it's based on the amount of abuse that adoptees have faced abroad. So Hannah Williams is a very famous case of a young girl that was starved out in the winter in the US by this Christian family that was abusing her. So there is sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, that is unfortunately rampant. Yeah. These families, when they adopt children, you know, how do you decide that a person is good enough to raise another child from another culture? It's hard enough to raise your own.
I know. Let alone somebody completely, even culturally different.
Yes, and it's not like these children, when they leave, they're not like blank papers. We already have an identity, as little as we are. We already have a place that felt like home. So initially we lose that. And then the problem with the system here is that in general there is just so much corruption.
Yeah.
So in the paperwork of the children that leave, a lot of these children are not actual orphans, but they are made orphans on paper.
Yeah.
They may have a mother somewhere. They have relatives somewhere. For different reasons, they were not able to raise them. But in the paperwork, a lot of that information is lost or erased on purpose because unless a child is an orphan, it's not supposed to leave.
You're right.
So the real orphans, we still see them on the streets.
Yeah.
It's usually not those that leave. Especially in the past, children that would go for adoption, often they were even from privileged families.
Wow.
But just from a sense of taboo, from coming from a union of parents that were not married, or having to lower the family status with a bastard child. These were also many reasons why adoptees were, or children were left through adoption. So when they come back now as adults, and they cannot retrace their birth family, then that's a loss for the country, it's a loss for the birth families, it's a loss for the adoptee who psychologically can never become whole.
Yeah.
And the question of who am I is the first question before you do anything in your life. Just because you have a house and your family has better finances, maybe in the West, it doesn't mean you'll be more successful as a person if you don't know who you are. So we're actually having a big seminar conference next year. We are inviting Ethiopian adoptees to come back, at least for a week, and partake in this seminar where we will be addressing some of these issues also with psychologists, with policymakers, with birth mothers and families, and adoptees like us that actually make that jump to come back.
With that said, I think we should go into poetry because that was, I mean, I got goosebumps. It's not a pleasant subject, and I don't think it's a subject that is actually talked about often. And the fact that you being an adoptee, it's not easier, but it's better to hear it from somebody that has gone through that as opposed to me sitting here and saying, yeah, I met X, Y, and Z, and this is what they said. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
I thank you. So now let's get into your other passion, poetry.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to recite something.
Please, poetry is a very beautiful way of expressing oneself. You know, when you know how to write, when you know how to play with words, I think it's a beautiful thing. So, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, go for it.
So the title of this poem actually is Home. And sometimes we feel homeless. Ethiopia has so much to share. Spiritual energy everywhere. Social cohesive where people still care. 13 months of sunshine. Let's backspace and rewind. We are beautiful people and our nature is sublime. Yet, at the same time, we have structural discrepancy, infrastructural deficiency, theatrical democracy, no privacy but community. Unpredictability demands flexibility, patience and determination. This opened my eyes to the reality, the synergy, the frequency. Connecting to the Creator is what truly sets us free. Incense, herbs, and spices, fragrances of the coffee ceremony awakens my early childhood memories, pleasing my senses to the highest degree. I am more at home with a slower pace, out of chronological time and geological space. In the realm of my ancestors, I am welcomed with grace. Home is true family, not just blood, but spiritual unity. The never-ending story, accepting me for me, exploring identity, at the cradle of humanity. Home is where my soul finds healing and my being becomes whole. Living my dream and witnessing the unseen, dancing through life, synchronizing to rhythm, we seek to find home within.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're done. As a Pan-African, what would you advise our youth?
Very good question. I work with African Artists for Peace initiative, and we have 3 focal areas. It's all around empowerment.
Right.
So empowering the youth, empowering our women, and also taking care of our environment. So I would love to see more young entrepreneurs that are involved in ventures that are socially responsible as well as environmentally. And really for them to awaken to the idea that we are co-creators. We don't just have to apply for jobs that are out there. We can create jobs. And we can build our skills. It's not bad to be volunteering for some time, get experience, so you can do your own. That's what I really would like to advise the youth. We are here with African Artists for Peace initiative to support young people, to promote the arts and to promote peace.
And how else? Beautiful. Well said. Thank you very much for coming to our studio.
Thank you for having me.
To talk to us. If there's any other thing that you would like to say to our audience, this would be the time.
Wow. Yeah, we spoke about a lot.
I know.
But in general, I would say make sure you're happy, healthy, and positive.
Yes, well said. Thank you for watching Africa. Till next time, thank you.